welcome back to Replay. Today we're talking about the Doom franchise. Doom, the game that first came out in 1993. Notable names associated with the franchise: John Carmack, John Romero, American McGee, Dave Taylor, and many, many more individuals I can't ever remember. But game is probably one of the most ported games in human history. Most recently, it was ported to E. coli bacteria. And apparently it also got running on a 1950s mainframe computer as well. And now, back in 2000...
I was a little disappointed by that video.
It was still fascinating, yeah. But now...
Yeah, it was so cool.
Yeah, but now, most arguably the worst port ever made was to American movie theaters in 2005. So, we have that going on.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt you.
Oh, no.
You're very well prepared.
Yeah, no.
Thank you for putting that together.
No worries at all. But yeah, I'm joined by Yahel from Wrestle Gaming as we sit here and dive into Doom 2005.
Yes.
Yeah. So, Doom as a game, was that one you played quite a bit back in the early 90s?
What? I heard that Doom was coming to video games. And so I had to play it. No, yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure the first time I played it was at school. I think that was the case for a lot of, people of our age, that grew up with schools that had, like, computer labs or whatever. Yeah, I mean, I liked it a lot. I didn't play the full game for, like, a long time afterwards because I didn't know anybody that had the full game, and my very religious parents weren't going to put up anybody to play Doom.
Yeah. And that kind of goes to, like, the unique cultural construct of Doom back in the 90s, with the shareware being the primary model for distribution. It was like, I remember going into a random PC store in Northern California, and by the door they had like a cardboard box just full of shareware games. And sure enough, right there was a disc for Doom you could pull out and just take home and install and have the first couple of levels. And my brothers did that. Now that's not really appropriate social behavior at all in terms of grabbing a disc and just putting it in your computer at home. It's kind of a bad way to be. A lot more trusting back then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because a lot of time too, like those, like free shareware things would sometimes they were just like copies that people made on, everyday floppy, so you don't know what somebody might put on there.
No idea. Like I think you had like Love Bug. Remember that virus being a big deal back around this time? But Doom as a game, mass appeal. Like a lot of people played it, did it. It was eventually ported to Windows 95, making it an extremely popular game on most Windows PCs. Granted, it wasn't the first FPS game, but it's certainly being made by id, the guys who made Wolfenstein. Every FPS game in that era became known as a Doom clone if it wasn't Doom itself, because it was all based off of that concept.
Right.
So it had that going for it. And after the massive success of Doom 2, Hollywood got interested, as they always do, and began pitching ideas and stuff like that to id to buy the rights to it to begin production of a film, which of course... Hollywood seems to have a 10-year turnaround time in game movies. And what was fascinating is that the movie project started, they picked up steam with initially talking to Arnold Schwarzenegger and then later Vin Diesel. But apparently it completely died out in the 90s because of Columbine, which that stopped a lot of stuff kind of dead in their tracks based on that cultural event.
Well, wasn't there also like some kind of incident where some kid like hurt or killed another kid with a chainsaw? And I guess they were like... It was blamed on Doom because they both played Doom.
I don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised if that was there.
I'm pretty sure that's why the Schwarzenegger movie actually didn't get made.
Really?
Actually.
Oh.
Yeah.
That would be fun to look into. I just kind of was grabbing basic notes on where it was going, but that's pretty fascinating.
Yeah, I'm looking at the trivia on IMDb, and yeah, that's what it says. That's why the Schwarzenegger one didn't get made. I mean, who knows?
Yeah, that's...
I'm just going off what somebody put in the trivia on IMDb.
Yeah, so there was a lot of controversy. I remember reading the book Masters of Doom. There was a whole thing where, like, it had to hire a bunch of bodyguards and security to protect their Texas office because of all the death threats and protesters they were getting around that time because they were blamed directly for it. But anyway...
Gee, I wonder what group would have been making these threats. I
wonder who would be making these... Yeah, who would be going after it? But yeah, the film really didn't go back into production until after Doom 3 came out, where that was the first game of the franchise that was very narratively driven, wasn't just a FPS, because John Carmack famously said, plot in a shooter game is as important as plot in a pornographic film. So you have that type of a take. But anyway, Doom 3 kind of acted as a selling point where they got new investors into the film, and then eventually this one picked up steam. And
Yes.
And what's interesting about it is it got like a lot of like the support staff behind it that did the effects, the creature effects, Sam Winston. So a lot of really good resources went into the production of the film, except the producers and directors and scriptwriters were not there. like the director they ended up landing on, I don't know how to say his name. He's a Polish director. I would just butcher this. I'll go ahead and put it on the screen here to let you guys figure that one out, because I don't know how to say that without probably offending someone. But anyway, this guy, notable films, he ended up directing Romeo Must Die, Exit Wounds, Cradle of the Grave, and then after Doom, he I think went into a suicidal spiral and made Street Fighter: Legend of Chun-Li.
Yeah, and I saw he made like a Russian money laundering movie as well. But from what I could tell, he's more of a cinematographer. And DP is usually what he works.
Yeah, I
as.
looked into that. You mentioned that, did the cinematography for Falling Down, Speed, Species, all really, really competent 90s action films, or at least
a lot of hits. He's got a lot of hits in his history.
Yeah, a lot of the hits, and then he decided to make this thing, which a lot of questions. But anyway,
I mean, it's 2005, somebody says, hey, you want to make a movie with The Rock about Doom? You're probably thinking, this is going to be a hit.
I guess imagine like a Polish director's like, who's The Rock? but
who is The Rock? I don't even know what a Swiss accent is.
Polish.
Like, actually, I just realized. Polish, oh. Well, I don't know what that's like.
Yeah, I don't know that one. But
I'm accent blind.
I'm from the Pacific Northwest. I don't have an accent. So I don't even know. But yeah, $60 to $70 million budget. Box office globally, $58 million. Did real terrible. Yeah. So,
did you see it in theaters when it came out?
I did.
I did too.
Yeah, and I remember just like sitting there going like, none of this is Doom. Like when I was watching the film, like the only thing I remember being from the movie, the BFG. And UAC, the corporation, and those are the only things that were even.
Well, the chainsaw
and the chainsaw, yeah. But like, so few things from the actual Doom game where they could have played homage to that, really didn't make it into the film. Yeah.
I mean, there's like a few like small Easter eggs here and there, like when I think it's when he goes to get the BFG, or there's something where like on the locker it has like one of the Doom codes to like get like unlimited weapons or whatever. And there's a few things like the key cards, like especially I think mostly the one in the beginning, like it looks exactly like, one of the key cards from the game. But I mean, it's really small stuff. None of nothing major really that would make you go, oh, this is Doom, outside of the couple things that you mentioned.
Yeah, it's so interesting. It's like then like the plot of the film deviates wildly than anything you ever really encountered in any of the Doom games. Yeah.
Did you see that initially The Rock was offered the role that Carl Urban plays, which is considered the lead role because he's like, the hero?
The good guy. No, I actually missed that.
So initially first, like I think you mentioned that they had offered it to Vin Diesel, and he's like, no, I'm about family, I can't do this.
Are there cars in this movie?
But are there any cars? No, I'm out. So they offered the role of Grimm to The Rock, which I'm guessing obviously would have changed the casting of the sister Grimm, because you can't have like a white blonde lady like be The Rock's sister, But he turned it down because he thought, not that he turned it down, but he opted to play Sarge because he thought that was a more interesting character. And I found it wild that The Rock, even at that point, had like the ability to be like, hey, no, I want this other part. Because they just offered it to him. It sounds like he didn't have to audition. Which is also wild, because at that point, he wasn't like a big movie star. He had started doing films already, but...
Yeah, because he did a couple of films. I think he had some mild box office success with like The Rundown and a couple of other action films.
Yeah, The Rundown was a hit. And I love The Rundown.
Rundown's a good one.
That's a really fun movie. And I'm guessing maybe because his performance was really well reviewed in Walking Tall.
Oh yeah,
at this point.
Yeah, that was another one that put him on the map.
So I'm guessing that's probably why. Oh, and he was in Be Cool also. So he had shown that he had a little bit of, he had something there as far as acting. Like, I know people like love to crap on The Rock as an actor, but he can act. He's just hasn't really been doing movies that require him to.
Yeah, I will say that like
this
performance is probably the least Rocky, like least rockish. I don't know what would you call that genre of his acting, like where it's The Rock, but he's trying to be someone else. Like he's actually trying to act, and that might have been a detriment to him. But at least it's not like your standard Rock film where it's The Rock in every film, right?
Well, it's not like your standard modern day Rock film. Because I mean, I was looking through his IMDb, and after Doom, the next movie that came out that he was in is Southland Tales, which I've seen, and I really liked that movie. I was actually surprised it was rated pretty low on IMDb. It's a weird experimental movie, but he's pretty good in that too.
I remember that one, yeah. That was a really unique one. Also, in 2001, he did Scorpion King. Unrelated, but yeah.
Yeah.
Or 2002.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like once he started doing like the action comedies, although I mean The Rundown is kind of an action comedy too, but like once he did, I can't remember if it was The Other Guys or some movie he did with Mark Wahlberg or something. Like that's when he kind of turned into like the Rock we see today, where he's kind of like the same in every movie.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting, like I guess, like The Rock was growing in popularity, but as far as like big names in this film, you really didn't have too many in the Doom movie. Like you had Carl Urban, who had done a couple other movies, but by no means.
But he's not a big name.
I don't think anybody else in this film is big name either. Like in terms of, I think the female actress might have been more well known than Carl Urban or some of the other people.
She turned down Harry Potter to do this.
But
she turned down Harry Potter to film this movie and Pride and Prejudice in 2005. So I think like that's why, because like Harry Potter was going to take so long to film that like by turning that down, she was able to do like these two movies. And I don't know if I can't remember. I'm not very familiar with the Harry Potter movies, so her character was going to be Rita something. I don't even know who that is. So maybe it was like a small role.
Maybe.
But yeah, and she's had like a really good career. So
yeah, so I think arguably she was bigger at that point than most of the male co-stars. But yeah, I
would say so.
Yeah, but interesting film in terms of like, didn't really get any huge names behind it, so it had that going for it. It was just being powered entirely by the cultural zeitgeist behind Doom, which I think by Doom 3 had really lessened, because I feel like Doom 3 wasn't as well received as the prior titles in the Doom franchise. So again, it's one of those things where the game is coming out when Doom is in this interesting mid-space between being popular, where now Doom has had a massive resurgence in terms of popularity. So it has that going for it. The plot of this film I found to be just wildly strange and just kind of poorly thought out for a Doom film. Like, a gateway is discovered in the Utah desert that is a direct link to Mars, which allows this corporation to go there and begin doing archaeological excavation on Mars, where they find humans who apparently come from there to Earth. So it gets weirder. And then they're kind of actually playing into the plotline from Doom 3, where UAC is doing unethical experiments on Mars by genetically modifying people based on DNA they found from the humans they unearthed on Mars, which was turning them into these biological monsters. Which, that's the plot. Something goes wrong, and then then The Rock and his expert team of Marines are sent to stabilize the situation and secure the the base.
Yeah. Which I mean, I understand changing, because I feel most video game franchises that are turned into film or TV, you kind of need to adapt it and change it a little bit, especially with like older franchises from like the 90s and stuff. So I'm not somebody that like scoffs right away at that, but whatever you're going to change needs to be good, and you still need to keep some certain core elements that make that what it is, that whatever makes Doom. And I really think that like not using demons was ridiculous.
Yeah, that was the biggest issue I had with the Doom movie, where I'm like, okay, so Doom, the game where you fight actual demons from hell because a corporation blasted a portal to hell, is a much more interesting story overall than genetic experiments gone awry. So that right there was a huge mistake. And what's
and I wonder why they went with that.
I didn't really look too hard, but I never really found a reason. And what weirds me out about it is like the movie came out as a hard R, right? So it came out as an R-rated film. So like there wasn't any reason why they would need to dumb down the flavor of it, right? Like, because normally you'd expect something like a change like that for like a PG-13 movie or something, trying to reach the widest audience. But the movie came out as an R-rated film, so it wasn't like you were going to get as many people to watch it anyway. So it's weird that they decided to do that. Maybe it just might have been a fear of just the backlash that the Doom games got from the 90s. They thought they might get that again if they embraced that whole, like, they're fighting the demons thing. But ultimately, you're fighting demons, so you're a good guy by default.
I mean, the only thing I can think of is that maybe because the Resident Evil movies, there had already been a few at this point, and they thought like, oh, having humans change into something different, into a monster or whatever, like that's more marketable. I'm guessing it was some corporate guy that was like, nah, make it more like Resident Evil.
Yeah, I imagine like that was something I kind of wrote in one of my jokes was. Like, you had Doom clones in the game industry, but now you have Resident Evil clones in the film industry for what this became. Because ultimately, like, this film is shot in such a similar manner to the Resident Evil films, at least the first one, in terms of, like, blue hallway environmental lighting, the zombies, the way they do stuff, the dark shots they do. So a lot of stuff is very similar to the cinematography in that movie. And, yeah, it's just so odd.
Yeah, it's odd. It doesn't really feel like Doom. I mean, maybe a couple times it does, but to me, the strangest part about them using the humans that are, have these experiments done on them, and then they turn into these creatures, is that quite a few of the creatures look like, the creatures, the demons you face in Doom, but they're not demons.
Yeah, they're not. They're just
like it's just dumb. And then I'm kind of getting a little ahead of ourselves, but. One of the characters, Goat, is like this really religious guy. Why would you make one of your main characters a really religious, super Christian guy and not use demons in the movie? Like, you could do something there, where maybe he goes, crazy first, or he's trying to warn them. He figures out first that it's demons. Like, why would you?
So much more they could have done there. Yeah,
there's elements. The ingredients of a good movie are kind of there, but it never comes to fruition.
Yeah, like in we see elements of a good movie, right? Like where like the Doom 3 game had a great narrative story that was all horror based, of an individual surviving, and what this film does is gets rid of the individual and brings in a team of people to fight him, which is completely contrary to the any Doom game. There was never a team of Doom people. So completely different.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And that's one of the changes that I could understand why they would want to make it. But I remember when I first saw the movie, my assumption was like, okay, this team is going to get killed off really quickly, and then we're just going to be left with one guy, and he'll be even if they don't call him Doom Guy, obviously, that's, essentially what he's going to be. And that's what I thought The Rock was going to end up being, but nope, that's not the direction they went in at all.
Just a interesting little twist there. Like the movie's opening, actually, I thought, like, from a horror standpoint, wasn't too bad, where they have, like, the people running down the hallway, arm gets cut off in the door, so it has some good little horror homages there going on. And then, and it has like the key.
And visually, I mean, the VFX in that opening shot and most of the movie look pretty good.
Yeah, like
they still hold up.
Yeah, they're solid. Like, they didn't look that bad at all. The only thing I thought was funny when they first introduced The Rock and he's sitting there shirtless, you can see the makeup covering his tattoos, and I thought that was hilarious. But
yeah, I was like, why is he shirtless to begin with? I did think it was funny the first time we see The Rock, he's just sitting shirtless. That tattoo makeup to cover up tattoos has gotten a lot better.
Yeah. And what's funny, I don't remember seeing that in the theater, so I'm wondering if that's like a byproduct of the unrated cut having some more scenes that I don't remember seeing.
Maybe.
So that might have been it.
Because I didn't really recall seeing, because I feel like I would have remembered, you can see his tattoos.
Yeah, I think I would have remembered that. But yeah, like they have like one homage that you pointed out where they, Dr. Carmack, in reference to, John Carmack from the lead developer basically for it. But yeah, if we dive into this, we can talk about how there's a team of individuals versus an individual guy. You got The Rock, simply known as Sarge, then Carl Urban, known as Reaper.
These names are awful.
Yeah, they're like terrible. But then like my favorite character, Portman. He didn't have a call name. They just called him Portman, and my dash was sex pervert ? Because
he is.
Yeah, because the way they introduced this character, I was genuinely perplexed. What was funny to me is I took notes about him, and then the longer the film went, the more things that just Portman started doing, where I'm like, this character is getting more and more developed as like the film progresses. Where I'm like, by the time I'm like, okay, so sex pervert, where he talks about having sex with boys, and then all of a sudden he gets to the plan. Like
I mean, not like boys, like little, kids or anything, but basically like femboys.
Yeah, like lady boys type deal. Yeah. So like
he calls them something else. I can't remember.
3 she-boys.
It's something that was like.
You're like, wow, what?
It's weird because he's into them, but it also sounded like a slur.
Yeah, it's like what? Yeah, but
yeah, this guy Portman, he's a pervert, but he's quite progressive.
Yep, yeah, he's a multi-gender pervert. But yeah, but then he like straight up harasses the new kid, the kid.
He's also terrible.
Yeah, like sexually harasses him on the aircraft. I noticed. I'm like, okay, that's interesting. And then he basically sexually harasses the women when they get to Mars. And then it gets there more gets added to him. Where like I just kept adding more to this list. Where I'm like, okay, he's a drug dealer, where he gives the new kid on the team drugs.
Yeah.
And then my favorite part of the movie was when they were talking about like, oh, we're gonna go there, do all that stuff, and he's like, hey man, by SOP, our standard operating, we're supposed to call for backup. Like he's the only sensible one on the team.
Yeah.
And then like, yeah, give him grenades in the portal room. He's like, dude, those grenades will blow up the portal back to Earth, and he's the only one that brings that up.
Yeah, he was I don't know if I'd say he was the most developed character. I think to me what it is, it's like he's not written in a way that he's really developed, but the actor put in such like a good performance and gave the character a lot of character.
Yeah.
A lot of personality, and where it felt like he felt like a real person. Nobody else, even though like in a lot of ways he's like the most like absurd and over the top one on the team, right? But like he felt like a real person. Nobody else really felt like
nobody
a real person.
Nobody came close. Like this guy, like he gave it his all in terms of like just being.
And he's been. I see he's had a great career. I see why.
He played a sleazebag real well in this movie, and he did a good job with that. And then like my favorite part, like I wrote bad timing Pooper because of his death. And, and now he goes to the bathroom, and I think he had the best death in the film in terms of. I wrote Portman Pinata. Because he gets like banged back and forth between the stalls and like murdered by the demon in the ceiling.
Yeah,
and I thought that was, pretty good. Like as far as how his character went out.
It was a fun kill, but I did notice that like he's like one of 3 people that get killed like that, like with the demon just grabbing him. And, So I think he might have been the first though. But I thought that was pretty lazy.
That's fair.
For me though, the best kill was probably. I think it was Duke that he's just like standing on a grate, and he gets like pulled through the grate like by the demon. I was like, oh, because that just feels real painful, Yeah,
because then like essentially, I kind of wrote like I figured out at least my idea was that basically they made Portman this kind of quote unquote moralist character. So that way they could demonstrate that, the virus only reacts to people that are bad innately. But if you're a good person innately, that the virus will turn you into the super soldier, which we see later.
So what Ian's talking about is like later there's like a piece of a tongue from... So basically these creatures that get turned, that were experimented on, they kind of infect other humans like the way the Borg do by like taking like a thing into your neck, like their tongue or something. So yeah, later like one gets a tongue cut off and they like put like Portman's brain matter up to it and it reacts.
Yeah.
But it doesn't react when they put
Destroyers,
somebody else's brain. Yeah.
Apparently
he's a good guy.
Good guy, yeah. And then so that was that. I figured I'm like, that's got to be why they made him this morally ambiguous character, so that way they could like show, there's no doubt this guy's a bad guy because of the things he's talked about.
But he was. I mean, if he had not been sexually harassing everybody, he would have been like one of the most likable,
most sensible characters. Yeah, and he even ended up calling for backup against orders. Like, he was sitting in the bathroom basically calling for help, essentially.
Yeah.
Because he's like, yeah, we're boned. But yeah, then you had the character named Goat, the religious fanatic they were talking about that ended up carving crosses into his arm every time he said the Lord's name in vain. And then Destroyer, the heavy weapons guy who had the minigun. Which, I'm like, all right. And then his death, I thought, was the funniest thing ever in terms of basically the more they explore this facility, they find the genetic experiment lab and all that, and there's like a pit with electrified walls. Destroyer falls down there, and he ends up having a cage fight with a demon, or well, not demon, but like the monsters. But he takes a CRT on the end of its cord and like uses it like a mace to beat on the. And I'm like, that's just like Doom. That was totally in the Doom game.
I thought that was so stupid, but it was fun.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll give him that.
Yeah, that was.
I mean, because realistically, I mean, like, even if somebody like chucked like a CRT monitor at your head, I mean, you can kind of block that. You'll be fine. But it was fun. It made for a fun visual, so I'll give him that.
Yeah. Yeah, but so that was kind of like, so his death was probably one of the more interesting ones. And my favorite thing, he's like trying to escape the pit, and then it just pulls the chain, and he like falls and dies, and I'm like, what a way to go. Then he had the kid, who is the new pointless new character. Yeah. Then you had Duke, who I think is the guy you're supposed to like, who's kind of hitting on Carl Urban's sister throughout the film. So you're supposed to have that for him. And you talked about the handheld gaming system.
Oh yeah, when they're introducing the team, yeah, he's like playing like on this portable, but the thickness is like it's like the thickness of like 2 Game Boys, but it's like a Lynx type, wide format, but it's only like this.
Yeah,
it's like.
And what I thought was funny is I feel like a lot of video game movies always do the cliche where somewhere they will show the game being played,
or something like
and the only time they show a game is that weird handheld. Is the only time they show game footage that at least I caught. I don't know if you caught anything.
No, I didn't catch anything else.
Yeah.
I mean, there's I guess the credits, but
oh, true, yeah.
Where they do like a pseudo CG, or it is CG, but like a fake Doom level basically.
Yeah, and then you had the character Mac, who was the last member of the team, whose name was really long in Japanese, but they just called him Mac.
I did not realize he was actually part of the team. I just thought he was there when they got there.
Well, there were some scenes in the unrated one where like they were cut so poorly. I'm like, wait, where are they, and where did this other character come from?
I was actually confused as to like where they had. It wasn't until I read your notes that I realized that at the end they're actually back at Earth.
You're like, what? Well, my favorite part was they find I almost said John Carmack, Dr. Carmack, but then like the next scene they're immediately going through this nano wall and there's a doctor there. I'm like, wait, where the hell did she come from? But it turns out they went back all the way to the secure area, but they didn't really establish that. So basically just poorly cut together there.
In this film, so the unrated version was like I think like 20 minutes longer than the rated one, and I mean I didn't really notice anything. It's been a long time since I watched the original, but I didn't really like see anything that stuck out to me. It's like, oh, this wasn't in the original. But one thing I did remember from the original is like you can never really tell where they're at, like when they're in corridors and stuff. Like it all looks the same. It's all like shot like the lighting is super dark, and to an extent I get it. You're trying to like create that atmosphere, but because it's all like this drab grayish brown color and it's dark. Yeah. And they're just like doing these bad angles, like when they're like running around, you can never tell. There's no sense of like location to me. Oh
yeah, and then like the base is laid out really weird to where they have like the airlock, but then like they go into the one area and it's all the dilapidated concrete for a space colony. But then it has like a really massive water sewer underneath that, which makes no sense.
I put that in my notes. Why I don't think I put it in the notes. I pasted in your thing, but I was like, hold on, let me see. Yeah, the pacing is not good. Then they try to throw intense moments throughout, but they really fall flat. Like when Portman lost his footing in the sewer. Hey, why are there sewers here?
Like, why is there a sewer on Mars with this much water? The thing that kind of bugged me with the team introductions, and then the weapons introduce their call signs and all that. I'm like, is this a Quake 3 movie? Like Quake 3 Arena? Because I feel like they were taking like that multiplayer, everyone's got their own call sign type name deal. And I'm like, that just doesn't. I don't know how. I never really played Doom multiplayer. Played Quake multiplayer, but like as far as Doom multiplayer, I don't remember. I don't know.
Well,
maybe the guys who like wrote the script were really big into the '90s scene of like multiplayer Doom and all that. But yeah.
But the thing is, Ian, even if like let's say that was a thing in Doom multiplayer, I think most people, at least like general audiences that know Doom but maybe aren't like really into it, they're gonna remember the single player experience, and they're probably gonna remember more than anything like the OG. You know. So yeah, it was a weird choice to do those call signs.
Yeah, but yeah, I guess odd choice there because kind of I'm like I expect that more in like a Quake 3 movie. But yeah.
Yeah. What did you think about the directing?
I think the directing was they had a lot of solid effects and solid creature effects, but I just don't think the directing I don't think he's an actor's director. I think he like wants to be more an action director, just based on doing like Romeo Must Die, where he worked with Jet Li, who could barely speak English, and like just focused on like, hey, if I do something visually cool, people will forgive the flat acting. But like,
see, but I don't think there was that much visually cool stuff.
Yeah, in
the action scenes.
Yeah,
the action scenes mostly sucked.
Yeah, it really wasn't. And the thing that I thought was really dumb was when they were like the Marines when they got back to Earth, they were covering each other down a hallway, where like they would take cover and then lay down covering fire. Like I'm like, they're unarmed zombies. They can't shoot back. Why are you bounding?
Right?
Like, why are you bounding up?
That was weird too.
Yeah, I was like, odd choice.
But you know, I'm not in the military, so I was like, okay, maybe that's just what you're supposed to do, because I thought it was weird too.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know anyone who does that.
I thought the action scenes were just like 90% of them were just terrible, because a lot of the action scenes would just be like, you know, they were like split up like in teams of 2 for a long time. And it'd be like they hear a sound or they see a monster, and then they just shoot wildly.
Yeah,
like worse than stormtroopers, and that's the action scene. Just
I forgot in my notes. I wrote splitting up. ... Scooby Doo teams of 2. Because like they just kept doing it. I'm like, why? Why would you? That was so frustrating because they just kept every time they did anything, they would just split up, and then sure enough, someone would get killed. Split up, and I'm like,
doesn't it feel like they should have had like a bigger team?
Yeah, like just the worst cliches in terms of how they were handling.
Yeah.
A lot of the stuff they were doing in the film.
Yes. Speaking of cliches, you know, like they do the thing where the Rock finally tells them what they're doing on the mission on the way to the mission.
Yeah.
I hate that. Like that makes no sense.
Wait, and then like
I assume that's not how it's done.
No, not really. Like, and then like he literally got an audio brief from somebody else and didn't bother to give like a quick little warning order to his team. He's like, "Oh, we're going to the Ark, and I'm not going to tell you anything until we're en route." And I'm just like, "What? Okay."
Yeah, and a lot of the dialogue is like pretty bad. Like, I can't remember who said it, but I think it was maybe Destroyer. He said, "If it's trying to kill you, it's a threat." Like, okay.
Like, yeah. So dumb. Yeah.
You know, I saw that you had put like in your notes about The Rock's acting, and just thinking he was over the top. And I saw that note when I had initially just kind of skimmed your stuff, and then I was like, I shouldn't read this. I shouldn't let it influence me. And as the movie started, I had actually written in my notes initially that, The Rock's acting is pretty serviceable in this movie. But then as it went on, it got like worse and worse. And by the end, he's so over the top, and not like in a fun way.
Well, it was like, I think what annoyed me about The Rock's character was instead of being like infected and turning into an evil person, he was just fine. Like he was actually a very reasonable, like decent NCO. Like, hey man, I know you're going through some problems right now. I know you have some people up there. Do you want to sit this one out? Like being like a very responsible,
at the beginning of the movie,
like human
with Carl Urban's character.
Yeah, like being a human person, and then like he goes through the thing, and then they get up there, and then all of a sudden they're like really upset that one of his men is wounded, and he like has this like really bad acting. Was like, oh, one of my men are wounded, and, like I'm like someone else died, and you weren't really that upset about that, but this guy, you're suddenly really upset, and it was just this weird progression. And
I agree. Like he went from like fine to like an asshole. And I don't know if that's a fault of the writing or the editing, but it's one of the two.
I think directing probably, because I don't think this director, at least based on his filmography, is I don't think he's an actor's director, like in terms of like getting
but I mean,
best
but it's not
performance,
in the script
Yeah,
either.
oh yeah.
Like there's no progression in the script.
Yeah,
either.
there are no words there.
So maybe there were, and then the editor cut him out.
That's very possible. Like, isn't exactly Citizen Kane.
Is that what I put?
Yeah, but like, yeah, I feel like The Rock, like his character, like his acting, kind of annoyed me around the time when like they get back to Earth, and the kid is clearing sectors by himself, and he finds an area where humans are alive, and he leaves them there. And The Rock is like, "I told you to clear that sector," and then he shoots the kid for not killing the civilians, and he wasn't even infected at that point in time. So I was like, "Come on, man."
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, okay, if you want The Rock's character Sarge to do that, that's fine, but you need to build to the character to get to that point, not have it like be suddenly the last 10 minutes of the movie that he turns into that.
Out of left field, yeah. And so that's the main thing that bugged me about his acting. Like, I thought he did okay up until that point. And then when he turned into like the monster thing after getting infected, he's like, "I'm not supposed to die," which I thought was a funny line for him when he gets pulled through the the shield.
The nano wall.
Yeah, nano wall. Yeah, so that wasn't too bad.
Yeah, so maybe it's not so much The Rock's acting; it's maybe more what he had to work with. Like, you know what it is? I think I got it. It's not that he's over the top per se; it's that it's a jarring change in his character.
Yeah, that actually feels about right.
By comparison, it feels over the top because he doesn't really have any scenes where he's like acting poorly. It's just like, whoa, where did this come from all of a sudden, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I don't think we could really put that on him.
Yeah, I wouldn't, honestly. It's just, I feel like everyone kind of like acted poorly, with the exception of Portman, who I think delivered probably the best performance, just based on his character. I think had a lot more scumbag stuff to pull from to make the character more interesting. So you had that going on with him.
Yeah, he did a good job with the character. I would say does the best job. Then right underneath him, I would maybe put the I can't remember the character, Sam Grimm, I think that was her name, the sister of Reaper. And then maybe third, what was his name, Duke?
Duke, yeah.
Duke, he was pretty decent. And then everybody else just kind of was phoning in. Like Carl Urban, I was really surprised by.
Yeah, like the one scene that like broke me for Carl Urban in this one was the scene where they're in the sewer and he realizes the kid is high on drugs, and he's not upset, but he delivers like this crazy flat line where like it's almost like he just showed up to get a paycheck that day, and that was all he was going to do. Yeah.
Like the line I think was written like he was supposed to be really super mad. But he doesn't deliver it that way.
Delivers it like you're disappointed your coffee order was wrong type deal, like
Yeah, but I wonder if, because Carl Urban's character is supposed to be the good guy, right? So maybe they didn't. I bet this is what happened. It's written like the line is written like something you'd see if you're really pissed off, but we're also supposed to be sympathetic to this kid because he's so young. So the director was probably like, "Hey, don't say it like you're going off on him because we want the audience to get behind you in about 20 minutes."
We're investing a lot in you right now, and we can't afford to have you come off as an asshole. Yeah. And yeah, because the acting I think was like probably one of the weakest parts of the film. But yeah, the thing, like we kind of mentioned this a little earlier, was like a Doom movie with zero Doom stuff in it. And you already brought up the lack of demons made for a really weak story. And the things that kind of really bug me is I'm like, it's a Doom game, and at no point is there a shotgun. Like, I feel like the shotgun is quintessentially a Doom kind of icon, and the fact that they didn't bring that out, I was like, that's a missed opportunity.
Yeah. You know what's really wild, Ian? The guy that like wrote this movie, he was one of the writers on Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse.
Really? So he understands like complex narratives. Interesting.
His IMDb is all over the place. He's a writer on I think he created the Expendables franchise, and he wrote looks like most of the movies, but he also wrote like the second Zombieland movie.
That was pretty weak.
Doom looks like it's the first thing he wrote.
he had to start somewhere, and that was the one. I mean,
that explains a lot.
I mean, it's also possible that like a like a competent story was in that initial first draft, and then it got passed around and the Hollywood machine and like producers, directors, and people not liking aspects, and then just
maybe
this was a product.
Yeah, he did Shang-Chi also, and I didn't watch that, but I know a lot of people that really liked it. And he wrote the new Mortal Kombat movie.
That one was pretty good.
2021.
Wow, that is quite the turn for this guy actually to do.
So
a pretty decent filmography turn. That's good.
Yeah, between the stuff he's written later afterwards, and like you've mentioned several times that there's like just very little Doom in the movie. I really bet there's a lot of like just studio meddling in this. That would be my guess.
I could see that being a huge piece of this. And then the only thing, you had UIC, the Corporation of Doom 3, then you had the BFG, which, big fucking gun, big, it's always been part of the Doom games. But then the only other major thing that, had a Doom vibe to it was the FPS sequence. And we'd both kind of talked about that in our notes.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought the FPS, and for those that haven't seen the movie, they do, a first-person perspective, as if it was, a Doom game at one point, and we're seeing it from Carl Urban's character's perspective, because at this point the Rock's Sarge has turned bad, basically. But I thought it was pretty well done sequence, and I think it was just the right length too.
Yeah, they kept it pretty well shot together in terms of it was a very the sequence flowed well. They had a decent opening where they did that nice neat shot with him standing in front of the mirror looking at himself, and so it had that initial good intro. And then the thing I liked though was as it went on, they did some fun action shots and stuff like that. And then when they cut to the last scene, it was a seamless transition to being out of his body, and then it was him going down the hallway. And I thought that that was the most competent and probably best part of the entire film.
I read that took 2 weeks to shoot.
That
sequence.
I could see that. And
yeah,
and with that scene, the only major things from Doom in that scene, you had the the wheelchair CG monster, which was the guy Pinky or whatever his name was,
he was one of the demons from the game.
Yeah, and
by the way, I thought the VFX on Pinky in the chair looked really good.
Yeah, they actually stood up 20 some odd years later. It stood up real well.
Yeah, the lighting was perfect. I mean, even the CG helicopter in the beginning part of the film, the visual effects look really good. The creatures for the most part all look really good. I like that they kept it mostly practical too. The creature effects.
Yeah, the creature effects being practical, I think, really at least held that part of the film together. Especially the scene, the sewer scene overall was dumb, but the part where Goat gets attacked, he's standing in the darkness and he sees two eyes looking at him, basically being reflected back, and it was all practical. And then more eyes open up, and then it comes at him, and that was actually a really well done spot. So this movie has moments of, I wouldn't say brilliance, but moments of really good competence. Yeah, competency. Where you're there's a good movie they could have gotten out of this, but they weren't all agreeing on what needed to happen at the time.
Yeah.
But the FPS sequence definitely really solid. What had me kind of laughing was when I was watching it now, after having played Thunder in Paradise on the Philips CDI so many times, I'm like, damn, if they just gotten the guys from the Thunder in Paradise game to help them produce this, they would have maybe a day. They would have done it in a day as opposed to 2 weeks to shoot it.
I mean, as much as I did love the FPS sequence, I mean, I'm glad that they didn't have it throughout the whole movie or overuse it. I mean, it made sense to put it towards the end of the movie. To me, though, that should have been the final action sequence. Not what we get after, when The Rock and Carl Urban, Dr. McCoy, have a fist fight.
Yeah, I think that probably would have been, if they'd ended on that note with the FPS moment being how they ended the fight in the film, I think that probably would have been a much better way to end it than the way they did.
Yeah. I mean, and it's okay, fine. You want to have The Rock and what's-his-face fight. I mean, maybe it would have been difficult to get across what was happening to the audience, but maybe do that as part of the first-person sequence. Maybe that could have been fun. I mean, I don't know. It might have been a disaster too that way. But, but what they did was certainly a disaster, because I don't know, man. When The Rock and him go to fight, so The Rock at this point has been infected, but he's not changing into a creature. Didn't you find that odd?
Yeah, he was just getting like hard eyebrows and like bigger knuckles. Like it wasn't like he was like morphing into like one of the demons. He was just
Yeah. They just had him like basically grip his fist and imply that he was like infected. And he didn't. His body didn't change until like 3/4 of the way through the fight, because I guess he got angry. What?
Yeah, I don't know, because essentially, if we're kind of jumping around a little bit like we always do, but like the way this film,
that's my bad.
Yeah, like the way this film goes chronologically is they get to Mars, they discover the genetic experiments. Grimm's sister is an archaeologist, but also apparently understands genetics above and beyond anyone else I've ever met. Yes. And she can like start dissecting the demons and all that. And she discovers that the the chromosomes, because they're talking about how the
basically like these superhuman remains that they had discovered on Mars. They had 24 chromosomes.
Yeah.
Even though these are supposed to be humans for some reason.
Well, and what's funny is like they're talking about having extra chromosomes, and I was sitting there thinking about that. I'm like, well, isn't that technically like Down syndrome? Is when you have an extra chromosome. So I was like, wait a second. In terms of how they work.
I don't think it's extra. I think it's you have 2 of the same or something.
I think with Down syndrome, I believe it's like just an extra chromosome hanging out. But yeah, with this, it's like
I'm gonna look this up.
Yeah, we'll have to look that up. We'll have to look that up. But like,
we should know. I feel like I used to know.
Yeah, we should probably know that. I've been drinking beers a little bit. But with that, she discovers that there's this super chromosome genome that they pulled from the native Martians that eventually fled to Earth from something. But the sister believes that, like, okay, if you're a good person and I give you this chromosome, you're going to just be a superhuman, be able to heal instantly, all that stuff. And if you're a bad person, you'll morph into these demons. And that's where we get that scene we mentioned earlier with the tongue and the brain matter and doing that. But like basically the story progresses, they get overrun, they have to flee the Mars facility, and they go back to Earth. And The Rock, the kid, and Duke, and Carl Urban's character, and his sister, they fight that, but then like Carl Urban's character gets wounded, and then she has to basically have this plea with him about like, hey, let me inject you with this. He's like, no, I'm not a good person, and all these things. She's like, I know you are, and then she injects him, and then that's when he wakes up and he's a superhuman, fully healed, and we get the FPS sequence.
He's right, because Carl Urban's like, no, I'm a bad person. You know, I've done bad things. I'll turn into a monster and kill you. But she's like, no, this will save you. You're a good person.
I believe in you.
Basically, and you were right. It's an extra copy of chromosome 21 that generally causes Down syndrome. But yeah, so that's why, and thank you for going through that, because there was kind of a lot I had glossed over.
Yeah,
so at this point, both Carl and The Rock are have been quote unquote infected. Except it's not going to change Carl because he's a good person. But the thing is, Ian, at the beginning of the movie, like you mentioned, they established The Rock's a good guy.
Yeah, he's not a bad guy.
You know? He's like, trying to be empathetic with... And that's another problem I had. He's empathetic to Carl Urban's character at the beginning. There was no animosity between the two of them at all throughout the movie. And then suddenly, like at the end, before The Rock is even infected, they're suddenly like, arguing and like at odds. And it's like, where did this come from?
Yeah, and it was kind of like... What I thought was intriguing was the way they shot it, because like The Rock gets back to Earth first. But like ultimately the demons already made it through because they somehow cut through that like 3-foot thick freaking vault door, and then got back to Earth and began slaughtering people. And then he basically orders his guys to start double tapping all the bodies to make sure they don't wake up and become the demons. Which I'm like, that's actually kind of a reasonable response to what's going on.
I agree.
Yeah. So it wasn't like he was that bad. And then like they do the whole thing where he's like, oh, I got to kill everybody. Which was kind of like felt like out of left field based on how this character had been sympathetic to his men, sympathetic to people, and so it just I don't know, it just came out of nowhere and it didn't feel like a natural progression of the story where they could have pushed him in different ways and shown he was a coward or something, some other character building moment that would have made The Rock's character seem like this was a reasonable turn for him.
Yeah, there should have been something where even if it was just like there's a scene at one point where Carl Urban and his sister are kind of having like a heart-to-heart and kind of mending the fence a little bit because they throughout it's implied or not implied. I mean, we're told that they're a little estranged in their relationship, and during that time would have been good for like Carl Urban's character to say, Sarge is mostly a good guy, but there's been some missions where he's lost it or gone off the handle. Something.
Yeah.
A line or two to plant that. That's all you need, really. When things get really hairy, he can turn into a cold bastard. Just something like that. That's all you got to do.
Yeah.
But no.
Yeah, I think it's the end there. Yeah, and the sad thing is, like, a lot of the film I felt was the kills didn't happen frequently enough to make it interesting enough, right? Like where they would occasionally fight demons in firefights and stuff like that, to where it didn't hit you enough with the horror to make it like a scary film. And when they did hit you with the horror, it just fell pretty flat in a lot of the scenes when they did it. And so that was kind of like just the weakness of the movie.
Yeah, and excuse me, the original movie is an hour and 45 minutes, it looks like, according to IMDb.
So, okay, so 10 minutes,
it's
actually.
pretty long.
Yeah.
Pretty long, and there's just not enough story for an hour and 45 minutes. I think if this had been like maybe an hour 20, an hour 30, like you said, then it wouldn't feel like there's not enough kills, because you can condense them a little bit. But yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah, there's just a lot more they could have done with that. And I think if they had gone more with like an alien type vibe of people being completely outclassed by evil monsters and demons, it would have made it a much scarier film where, like, no matter what, these guys were going in the hallways and they got in a firefight, plugged a couple rounds, they would win the fight. And it never crossed into that thing where, like, you felt genuinely concerned. And also, like, the characters weren't likable enough for you to care whether they died or not. And that was always a problem. Like, even Portman.
Yeah.
Like, who's a monster. You're like, okay, cool. How is this guy going to die? That's like what you're waiting for while you're watching it.
Yeah. And even Sarge, like, felt pretty underdeveloped. Like, we really don't... All that we know, really, about him as a person happens in the beginning of the movie. And, like we've said numerous times, he comes off as kind of a nice, caring leader,
like cared about his guys. He's like, hey, man.
Yeah. He's like joking around with them, and you can tell he's got personal relationships with them, and then at the end he's just suddenly a dickhead before he's infected.
Yep. Suddenly just executes the kid for not murdering a room full of civilians. And that was just a twisting point. You're like, okay. So many odd choices in this film.
Yeah. Yeah, not good. It's funny though, the first maybe the first 15 minutes of it, I was like, oh, maybe this isn't as bad as I remembered. Because, like we said, it's got, like, the really, like, fun, cool opening sequence. It feels like, okay, this is going to be, like, a fun, fast-paced, like, action movie, but nah.
Yeah. What was funny is my wife was like, I was watching it out here in my garage office. And she came down and she's like, oh, that sounds terrible. It sounds like horrifying what you're watching. I'm like, no, it's really not. Like, as far as a horror film, it's probably one of the weakest ones out there in terms of how it throws abject horror at you. And like, a lot of that comes from the fact, like, if they had embraced the demon angle and the stuff they could have done with that in terms of body horror, demons possessing people, like, it could have been a much, much better film. And what's even funnier about, like, the Doom franchise, as we're jumping ahead, like, the next film was, like, what, Doom Abomination or whatever the next film was. It was, like, almost like a made-for-TV sci-fi movie was the next Doom movie. And it was arguably even worse and lower budget than this, but it actually, like, embraced the demon portal aspect, so it actually went...
Oh, see, I never watched that.
I never watched that one either. I've watched, like, a couple of clips and reviews of it, but, like, it looks terrible. And it just... And just no matter what, like, the Doom franchise, I think, it traded off the rights to the wrong people, who are now just doing that thing where every 10 years they make a shitty movie just to hang on to the rights.
Just to hang on to the rights, yeah.
Yeah, and it's just in that realm. And this film, unfortunately, just... They had the budget, they had the actors, they had the resources to make something really good. Like, they had the Sam Winston team making really good, cool practical effects monsters that today still stand up. Like, elements of this movie, effect-wise, stand up pretty decently, which was the surprise to me when I rewatched it. But, like, the acting and everything else about the movie did not.
Yeah, it's pretty rough.
Yeah.
It's pretty rough. And, like, the set design, like, some of it looks cool, but a lot of it just looks drab and very samey. Like,
it was like the same corridors every couple of minutes, like confined space type shots. And ironically, like, the film is very cliche. Like all these things, like the guy, like the emotionless hero and all that, and like talking about Mars. And they have a scene where he's like looking at the archaeological dig, and they're like looking into like what's out there, but like that's where his parents died. So they have that whole sequence where he's looking out the window and you hear the audio of his parents dying over his face.
Yeah,
which immediately made me think of the Team America scene where the gorilla like rips apart his brother, and they have the audio going there, and I'm like that. I'm like, that's all it is.
That was another thing that like felt, even though they had mentioned his parents dying out there earlier in the movie, like it felt so odd to like show that scene. Like, oh, and you do you remember what happens in that scene after he's like looking out there?
Oh, what else?
The Rock comes up and like basically comforts Carl.
Oh god, like he's a good person again. Yeah, that's right.
he comforts it. He's like, oh, this is where it happened, isn't it? He's like, oh,
like an empathetic
I know this
guy.
is tough, but we're gonna make it out of here. You know, you get that kind of speech. It's like,
oh man, like that. I missed that, and that's funny.
yeah, but yeah, I mean, you know, I think this would have been bad even if it had been, even if they had used like demons instead of like these genetically enhanced or changed humans or whatever. Mm-hmm. But at least you could have done more with the setting. You could have had like bloody pentagrams everywhere, and do stuff to the base to progressively throughout the movie make it look more like the Doom levels and more hellish, more demonic, instead of what we got.
Yeah, like so much potential here that was just completely wasted. Yeah, then we kind of go into the thing where like Carl Urban and The Rock fight, and they're both at this point. The Rock this is the end of the film. The Rock is infected, so he has the evil genetic strength, and then Carl Urban has the good genetic strength that his sister gave him. And they end up having a high octane fist fight between the two of them, where like they're bending bars
with a lot of bad wire work.
Yeah, a lot of bad wire work. And then The Rock is slowly morphing into some kind of demon character, where then he eventually loses.
Oh, yeah. It was real sudden, I thought, because it was like, by the way, so at one point in the movie, like Carl Urban, I can't remember, he does something with like a pipe to him, to The Rock or whatever, but then Rock grabs it, and then he just like wraps the metal around his arm, and then starts hitting him. Like, how would that make his arm strong? They imply that like this is added strength to The Rock. It's not like he wrapped it around his fist like a chain or something.
It's
like around his forearm.
Like adding more weight to the punch, maybe.
Maybe. It's like he made himself a giant bracelet, basically. And they act like this is adding strength. So I thought like that was like real weird too, and nonsensical. I mean,
yeah, and I guess they needed that climactic fight, and I guess I'm not sure they knew where they wanted to take it, or because like in the Doom games, you would have fought the devil or something more interesting that would have been like a great climactic end to your film. And in this one, it was just two guys fist fighting in a large open space with wire work.
Yeah, why wouldn't you just turn The Rock into like a big creature? Maybe after the Scorpion King, after The Rock had become that shitty CG Scorpion King, he was like, no. It's gonna be me.
It's just me, and I want a pipe wrapped around my arm. I want that.
He thought it was like a WWE match.
Oh yeah, oh god, and then the way the way Carl Urban kills The Rock is they do this really awkward thing where he like then swings him, and like then all of a sudden The Rock is in 0 G's and just like flies over.
He's like in the arc portal or whatever.
But he starts in 0 G basically, and then goes to the arc portal.
Yeah, because of the bad wire work.
Yeah, but bad wire.
Like, it looks like, he just, like, floated him over there. And I, to be honest, had completely forgotten that they fought at all. So I was, like, really surprised when they started fighting. I was like, oh. But when Carl Urban gets him, like, and basically, like, The Rock's bottom torso is in the bubble portal thing, right? And then Carl Urban's like holding on to him.
Well, because the pipe is through his hand, right? Like,
yeah. But Carl Urban's like purposely holding him there. So I thought what was going to happen was like The Rock's legs were going to get ripped off, and like they were going to get portaled away, and The Rock's like upper half of his body was going to stay here because something like that happened to the guy in the wheelchair. So I thought like it was going to be a callback. So because one thing that this movie did well was they paid off. They set up like a few Chekhov's guns, and they do pay them off. Like they pay off the electrified pit.
Oh yeah,
later on, because that plays into the fight with the swinging CRT TV. When they go to the first nano wall, which is basically like a regular wall, but you can walk through it when you hit a button. But they said, and the guy's like, oh, I hate these nano walls. I don't trust them. But they have a payoff later when they basically kill a creature by closing the nano wall when it's halfway through it. So like they did stuff to like they did like a good job of setting some things up and paying them off. So I thought for sure, oh, that's why they set up like because they show us how the guy lost his legs like in a portal. So I'm like, oh, they're gonna do it to the Rock. That's good at least. No, Carl Urban just holds him for a little while. Then he's like, all right, I guess I've held you here long enough. Goodbye. Then he lets him go.
Yeah, that would have been a pretty good way to end it, actually. Like, they just cut the Rock in half and killed him that way. But then, yeah, anyway, breaks his hand out and he heals instantly, lets him go through the portal, then, throws the grenade that, Portman said would blow up the Ark room back through it and erases the Ark room and leaves them there on Mars. And,
so, go ahead.
No.
Go ahead.
And then, it cuts to Carl Urban in the elevator carrying his sister up, and then Nine Inch Nails starts playing.
The music in this movie sucked.
Oh, God, and what bothers me is, like, Nine Inch Nails...
Not the Nine Inch Nails part, but, like, everything else in the during the movie, the music sucked.
Oh, yeah, it was all shit. Because I'm like, the Doom games always had great MIDI music that always played well to the mood, works really well. And, like, when I was watching the film, I noticed, like, I would say 80% of the scenes had zero music behind them. Like, there was no ambient music of any kind, which they could have pulled something. Like, I was reading somewhere that said that they played off of some of the game music, but, like, I didn't hear any of it. Like, at least in my brain, I didn't feel it translated, or it came through the way they intended.
I didn't hear any of it either.
Yeah, so there's so many things they could have grabbed from the Doom games to, like, bring the ambience level up and make it more interesting. And, like...
I mean... Yeah. I get why they couldn't use the music from the game, because a lot of the music from, especially like the first couple Doom games, they're rip-offs like real songs.
Oh, that's
like
true. Yeah.
Rain and Blood from Slayer, and stuff like that. So I wasn't surprised about that, but I was just surprised at how generic, and it's just like generic action music. Like it sounds almost like royalty-free music.
Yeah,
like it just
like that collection of DVD music you could grab that's royalty-free after you buy the box set.
Now that's what I call action music.
But yeah, like, and what's funny is, like, Nine Inch Nails, they had that song at the end, because Nine Inch Nails famously did the music for the first Quake game. So you had that fun element. At least there was another homage to, like, id's development of games later with Nine Inch Nails coming at the end. But I'm like, why wouldn't you have asked them to do, like, more music, considering, like, Nine Inch Nails were big fans of the Doom franchise overall. So, like, why wouldn't you make that, like, a tie-in?
Afford it, I guess.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, like, I guess, what, $60-70 million? That's kind of I guess that was a lowish, middle-range budget back in the mid-2000s.
I mean, and this movie does have, like, a lot of effects in it, visual effects, so...
Yeah. Just
a lot of the budget went. It's a big cast. I mean... Well, then again, the cast couldn't have, like, taken... But the cast isn't, like, super well-known.
Yeah, like, you only have, like,
so
3-ish actors in the cast that had done it, like, that were decently sized. And I can't imagine they paid too much for them. But yeah, I don't know. It's like, there's a lot of competent elements, and then a lot of things where you're like, why... If you just made it more Doomish, like, more like the Doom game, you probably would have had a much better product that people would have wanted to watch. Because the funniest thing to me is, like guilty pleasure movies that people hate, like Wing Commander, I love that movie because it's actually pretty well competently thought out in terms of how that movie comes together. Yeah. And I'll rewatch it occasionally because I enjoy the film. This one, I think this is the first time I've rewatched Doom in, like, 20 years because of how just bland this film was.
Yeah, this is only the second time I've ever watched it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the last time I watched it was in theaters. And then I think I looked into buying a copy of it back in, like, 2006 because I had an HD DVD player back then. And I'm like, oh, there's only, like, 20 movies out, so I might get Doom. That was, like, the only rationale for even buying it back in the mid-2000s. Was the format
it was like, well, I either have to get Doom or Babe. Guess I'll get Doom.
All right, Doom, yeah. And, like, yeah, legit hadn't rewatched it in that long just because of how just... This is what misses the mark. Like, even, like, the Hitman movies, as dumb as those are more rewatchable than the Doom movie is.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's I think the worst thing is that it's just boring.
Yeah, that's kind of the greatest sin of this one, is that it's just it's not entertaining, it's not enthralling, and I was sitting there and I was trying not to go from my phone because I was bored, and I was like,
me too.
There were a couple times where I grabbed my phone, I'm like, oh no, I'm trying to watch the movie, And I'm like, God, this movie's just fucking boring. Like,
Yeah.
even with the horror elements.
Like maybe if everybody had acted like as I don't think Portman was over the top because it made sense for his character, but you know what I mean? If everybody else had acted over the top, maybe that would have at least made it like fun in a campy kind of way.
Yeah,
but
yeah. Or if like, because like you had so many people on the team, because like Portman, I feel like got more screen time than a lot of the other characters in the film, and his character like at least was more interesting. But like you had Carl Urban's character, which I don't know, was so bland. Then you had like, let me go back to my list of characters here. I wrote the team out.
He was like, he felt like very vanilla.
Yeah, just very vanilla. Like there's just a lot of like Goat, for example. They could have gone deeper into the whole religious fanaticism there, and like had interesting elements where they're like there's pieces of a good movie here, and I think that's probably where I'm getting stuck on this film.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, but
oh well.
Yeah, but I think we've gone pretty deep into this movie and got as far as we had. There's
we've probably thought more about this movie than the producers did.
Yeah, and it's just funny that like you had at least a team of competent people. But the thing that I find really funny is the director eventually going on and doing Legend of Chung-Li, which is arguably even worse than this one.
I never watched it, but it looked awful.
Oh, that one's so bad. We should probably do that one. But yeah, but overall.
Fine.
Overall, I would not recommend this movie just because of it's not rewatchable. There aren't any really good lines. Like there's the dumb line where The Rock comes out and goes "Semper Fi, motherfucker." They're like, okay, you're a Marine, we get it.
Yeah.
And just so poorly done.
It doesn't. It's just bad. It doesn't fall into the so bad it's good. There's a couple kind of interesting kills, but nothing like really super creative either.
Yeah, like I think that's probably one of the worst things about the film. Like it's a horror film, and none of the deaths are at all captivating. Like the Duke one, which was interesting through the grate, and then I thought the Pinata one for Portman was funny. But that was it really didn't have much
no
else.
tension.
Yeah. Just nothing's earned. You don't care about the characters.
Boring.
Yeah.
Just barely any music, and then when you do hear music, you're like, "Oh, maybe I was better off with silence."
Well, yeah, because the stock can stuff, and it's like there was so much material just to pull from Doom itself. Like even like the Doom 3 game that had just come out, there was stuff they could have pulled from that more effectively to build a better, more.
This should have had like a driving metal soundtrack.
Yeah.
You know, but instead it's like a lot of like generic orchestral action music for the most part.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just disappointing.
Yeah.
But all right, that was Doom 2005. Yeah.
Thanks for making me watch this.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I feel one day, I mean, we'll find a better video game movie to talk about. But I just don't think. I don't know. I gave up on that joke like they gave up on making this movie. But all right. So all right, at that point, we'll go ahead and end it here. Catch you guys in the next one. Bye.
Bye.